So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Peggy Farren with Understand Photography, and to my, I don't know which way, are you on my right or on my left, is Trish Oliveira, who is our Cuba tour manager. So we are here to answer your questions about Cuba, but we wrote up a whole bunch of questions already that people have asked us over the years that we've been traveling to Cuba. So we have a PowerPoint with all these questions. And I think Trish and I are just we just wanted to show you who we were in case you didn't know.
Our faces.
But now we're going to close the webcams and get right into the PowerPoint. Bye-bye for that.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any questions?
All right. So here we go. Travel to Cuba, frequently asked questions. Okay, so the way we're going to work this is I'm basically going to ask Trish a bunch of questions, and when we get to the photography stuff, then I'm going to answer my own questions. So, Trish, is it legal to travel to Cuba?
Absolutely. Peggy, traveling to Cuba, and by the way, it is a #1 destination in the Caribbean. It is a highly desirable island to go to. I personally have been going to Cuba since 2011 and have taken hundreds of Americans to Cuba, and it has been such a delightful experience. So yes, it is legal to travel to Cuba. Our program is a people-to-people program, okay? And this is how most US citizens experience Cuba, since it's an educational program that we are working on, in this case for the February tour, legally permitted by OFAC. And OFAC is the Office of the Foreign Assets Control in Washington. And therefore, we are under that license, and we are able to legally do Cuba a tour, whether it's 5 days, 10 days, 12 days, and show everyone what an amazing island it is.
Okay, so this is, I'm going to just back up a little bit. So let's go step by step. Do we need a passport?
Yes, we certainly need a passport. Whether you're an American or from anywhere else in the world, we do need a passport. Please, you need to check your passport to see your validation or when it expires, because we can only travel to Cuba, in this case, that your passport has to be valid more than 6 months. So our Cuba tour in February, 2019, you need to make sure that it is valid beyond August of 2019.
Oh, so if you need to renew it, you need to get going now.
Yes, usually you have about 6 weeks on the slow mail, also known as the USPS. You can also contract expedited services, but we've got plenty of time. So we're still in October, the beginning of October. And for those of you, please pay attention, look at your passport, make sure that it is valid for 6 months beyond February. And yes, make sure that you got your new passport, and it's all good from there.
Okay, and now how do you need a visa to go there? How do we get the visa?
We will get the visa through the airline, whether you're flying Delta, American, or Southwest. We get the visa. We pay between $50 and $75, and we get the visa right before boarding the plane. It's called Cuba Travel Services, and once you pay for your visa, once you check in with the airline, you will obtain your visa right there before you enter the gate at the concierge or the kiosk.
And what about the medical insurance?
The medical insurance, it's included with every ticket, whether you buy Delta or Southwest or American. JetBlue used to fly to Cuba, but they no longer fly there. So depending on the current, Delta, American, or Southwest, it is automatically included. So you got medical insurance in Cuba.
Okay.
Automatically included, yeah, with your purchase ticket.
Okay, so how about, is Cuba safe?
Absolutely. First of all, as a woman traveling to Cuba on my own and with my groups for the past 7 years or so, I find it that it's extremely safe. And I have to say that, for example, there are no guns in Cuba, with the exception of the police. but the locals don't have guns. It is extremely safe to walk in the evenings, in the mornings, in the afternoons. It's very, very safe country. However, it's a country like anywhere else in the world. So I always advise my participants or clients to, keep an eye out for their gear, especially us photographers. We have to carry the baggage and the gear. So don't leave your things unattended and go dancing samba. or so always keep your eye out. And most importantly, all of our hotels that we stay, we have the safe, and that way you can keep your important information such as money, passports, and so forth inside the safe. But yes, all in all, Cuba is an extremely safe country, one of the safest countries that I have traveled in my life.
Me too. Denise just asked a question. Can you use global entry when you return to the States?
Absolutely, Denise. I have global entry myself. Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay, so if you have global entry, bring it so you don't have to wait in the line going home, right?
Right. Remember, it does not work in Havana or in Cuba, but it does work only in the States.
When you come home, right?
When you come home and yeah, exactly. So let's say we're leaving from Fort Lauderdale or Atlanta, depending on your city, and there will be a kiosk for global entry, or, once you get your ticket, it will say TSA pre-approved. That means your global entry, friendly. But yes, certainly when you come back from Cuba, you can use your global entry. I use mine all the time for the past 5-6 years. Yes.
And by the way, if anyone listening doesn't know what that is, I actually wrote a blog article about it when I got my global entry. So if you go on understandphotography.com and just do a search under global entry, you'll see that blog. Actually, it wasn't that long ago, so it should be up towards the top somewhere in our blog. So it talks about how to get the global entry. Okay, so what about money?
Okay, let's talk about money in Cuba. There are two currencies in Cuba. We have the pesos, which is the current, currency that the Cubans use. But we are going to be, as foreigners, not just Americans, okay? As foreigners, we use CUCs, also known as Cuban convertible pesos. And if you're going to be bringing US dollars to Cuba, and the exchange rate will be 13%. And some places do accept dollars, depending, if it's a private artist or so forth. Some Cubans prefer dollars over CUCs, but please keep in mind that we have to keep CUCs with us for paying taxis or to ride a bike or to go to a show. Everything is CUC based. And so for every $100 that you're going to be bringing to Cuba, the exchange rate is 13%, and therefore you're going to be receiving 87 CUCs and some change. Okay. However, if you have euros, that is a much more favorable, money to bring to Cuba, because you're going to be getting a much better rate. But just keep in mind that we cannot use our credit cards in most places, and the ATMs, we cannot retrieve money only because of the embargo between U.S. and Cuba.
Mm-hmm. Fran just asked, and I know this isn't the PowerPoint, but you can go ahead and answer it now. Can we exchange the money here?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
Only in Cuba.
Okay. All right. So most places don't accept credit cards. You cannot get cash from an ATM. So make sure you bring enough money and, separate it. Put some in your sock and some in one purse and some in your, you know what I mean? What about travel insurance? Now, we highly recommend travel insurance just because things come up. You could get sick, or there could be a hurricane or whatever.
Yes, the flight, the plane's broken down, or, your luggage wasn't delivered and so forth. Because remember, guys, medical insurance is already covered with your purchase of your ticket through the airline. In addition to that, we highly, strongly agree to buy travel insurance, and that covers everything from in addition to medical, lost luggage, or the planes, or whatever, travel insurance, everyone's aware of that. For a good example, I'm traveling actually in 2 days to Cuba. I'm going October 5th through the 12th, and we are in the peak of the hurricane season. The good news for this tour in February, first of all, the climate's going to be wonderful, very similar to South Florida, low humidity. So that means our cameras will not be foggy, and that's a good thing. And but for those of you who are, concerned about additional insurance, yes, we recommend that, just an extra added, security for you. And but yes, the month that we're going to be traveling in February, we are going to be out of the hurricane season, but you just never know. You just never know. So it's highly,
Well,
it's
it protects him if you get sick. I mean, that happens. Things happen.
Yes, exactly. You buy your tickets, you pay for the tour and you get sick, and guess what? You cannot go. That extra travel insurance will cover that. So make sure that you go to insuremytrip.com or squaremouth.com and you can compare plans, and they're wonderful. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, and then you said the airlines might offer it as well. How do we look
Yes.
into
So for example, if you go to Delta, if you buy your tickets, let's say from Atlanta to Havana, in addition to the medical insurance, which is already included in your ticket, you can also purchase travel insurance. For example, I purchased mine for $28 for the week that I'll be going to Cuba.
Wow, that's crazy cheap. Hey,
Very cheap
Denise,
and so worth it.
Denise just wrote that some credit cards offer trip insurance if you're paying for the trip with your credit card too. So I didn't know that.
Well, you need to contact your credit card company in this case and let them know that you're going to be traveling to Cuba, just to cover your bases. And while I'm at the subject, also for your cell phone carriers, whether it's AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, we are now able to send and receive text messages. So like the carriers for the phones, please contact your credit card company about the coverages.
Okay, well, you just brought up something that I didn't know, because we could never use our cell phones. It's been about 2 years since I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use a cell phone now?
Absolutely. Again, call your carriers. I have T-Mobile, for example, and I pay $1.99 a minute to make phone calls from Cuba to the States, and 50 cents per text message, whether I'm sending a message or receiving a message. However, the good news, here's the good news, everyone. Cuba is, changing so fast. The wireless system is actually working pretty well in Cuba. Google is part of that reason. So in addition for our hotels, we can buy, what they call tarjetas, also known as cards. But because we're going to be, let's say if we're going to be checking our email and we're going to be in our hotel, super fast internet. And for those of you who want to stay in touch with, loved ones or check on your cat, with a cat sitter, you can download my favorite apps for Cuba, between the US and Cuba, are IMO, IMO, or WhatsApp, WHAPP. So those are found through whether you have an iPhone or an Android. So helpful, so helpful. And the other thing that I really liked too, which I want to add, it's called Maps with Me. Maps with Me. You can download an offline map. That way, if you're on your own, walking in the streets of Havana or wherever you are, you know where you are, and you can find places to go to, paladares, places to go dancing. So yes, so the internet service in Cuba is certainly much, much better, Peggy, than when you were there 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, the last time I went, I paid for extra money for internet and I still couldn't get on.
No, it's very different now. Don't listen to the Kardashians, people. They had no idea what they were talking about. Yes, internet is available and widely available, especially in Havana. I mean, yes, if you go, to the outside the outskirts of Havana, is less likely, but still it's very much improved in the past few years. So no problem with that.
Okay, so Maps with Me, that's an app. IMO, Emo is another app, and then WhatsApp. Those are apps that we probably should look into.
Absolutely,
And then,
absolutely.
yeah,
And
and Sue,
remember, if you're gonna have a loved one or a family member or a pet sitter, they have to have those as well. Otherwise, the other option is calling them or texting directly, which will cost you more money, but at least you have the security of knowing that everyone's doing well. And guys, by the way, once we do this tour, I do have a Cuba phone. So in case of emergency, we will provide that phone number to your family and friends. That way, me, Trish, I will be, able to deliver the message and so forth. But it's only for emergency. So that's another nice thing that we are doing on this tour.
cool. Okay, so let's keep talking about money. So tipping, what is how do we tip? Because tipping,
So
I know
very
you have to tip to go to the bathroom.
yes. First and foremost, I'm not sure if most of you know this, but Cuba, the average income is about $18 to $20 a month. Yes, you heard me right, $18 to $20 a month. So you will see a lot of need in Cuba. In addition to tipping, I always like to bring. I do a lot of philanthropy, so I bring, medicine or school paperwork or things for kids, because they really, really appreciate that. So back to the tipping, you're going to see a dire need for these ladies who stand in front of the bathroom for the men and women. And it's really nice if you can tip them 25 to 50 cents, as you use the bathroom. And they will provide you with TP. However, feel free to bring your own, but it's still very nice to tip them. That really helps them because they keep the bathroom cleaned, and they say a very nice, friendly smile to you. And it's part of the people to people. I've had a lot of tours, Peggy, that, people just conversations with the bathroom lady, and they ask them questions, and so forth. A lot of them speak Spanish and English, of course. And so yes, bathroom tips are, a must, I would say, to take a picture for us photographers. Okay. Yes. We want to encourage the Cubans, and they're very natural, but I also wanted to encourage one to two cooks, for a few minutes of their time. And restaurants, yes, 10 to 15%. Usually, if there's a party of 8 or more, some restaurants include the tip already. So you always want to make sure that when you check your bill, but it's also very nice to add 10 to 15% because Cuban food and the restaurants, it's relatively very, very affordable comparing to the States. For example, you can get lobster for $15.
$15.
you know so incredible food. And tour guides, yes, these guys depend on our tips. They do get paid in pesos, and I want to briefly explain the difference between pesos and cooks. Okay,
Okay.
pesos are what the Cuban people get paid in. So one cook equals 24 pesos. So $1, let's say 1 to 1, $1 equals 24 pesos. The average Cuban gets about 360 pesos, again, between $18 and $20 a month. So our guides are excellent guides. They speak several languages. They all have gone through the University of Havana. They have to pass, a test. They're very competent people, and they're wonderful. They're wonderful. And our drivers, let's not forget about our drivers. They're not just driving us back and forth. They're carrying our luggage. They're paying attention to the roads to make sure that we are, safe. And in addition to that, you're going to find that Cuban people are extremely friendly, and it goes beyond money. It goes beyond money to deal with them. So.
Okay. All right. So, all right. You know what? I just decided, I didn't think about this, but I'm going to print this off or not print it, but I'm going to save it as a PDF. And when I send out the replay, I'll send, I don't know, a link or something so people can download this as well. All right. Because we want to keep moving. It's 7:20 already. Can you believe it? All right,
I
so
know.
can I drink the water?
No, you can brush your teeth with the water tap. I have no problem with that. It's up to your discretion. Some people prefer to use the bottled water that we provide. We will provide 2 bottles of water per person per day, but by no means do not drink, the tap water. No.
And you know what? It's in at least in Havana, it's easy to find bottled water, so you can always buy more too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Or you could drink mojitos.
Well, you can drink mojitos, but as I always say, kids, keep yourself hydrated.
What about the fruits and vegetables?
Because Cuba is 83%, driven by tourism, it is, by law from the Cuban government, that they have to wash their fruits and vegetables for salads and ice, because a lot of people that I take there, Trish, is the ice okay to drink and so forth. Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, do I occasionally have someone who will get sick? Yes, I will. So make sure, guys, that you take, just a little tummy ache medicine, whatever, because you never know. Some people are different than others. Um, but absolutely, the fruits and vegetables are perfectly fine to eat.
What
Whether you
about
want to.
like what about if the like in this picture, if you pick
Yes,
vegetables,
so as you can
fruit,
see to the picture of your right, the gentleman selling garlic, and I see bananas and yummy, yummy fruits. Absolutely. And this is the funny thing, Peggy, because he will probably be asking for pesos instead of cooks. So let's say if you have one cook, because we're not going to be dealing with pesos, okay? Remember that. We're only
Mhm.
going to be dealing with the Cuban cooks. For one cook, you guys, you can get a handful of bananas, the garlic. I mean, not that we can take anything home, but for one cook, you can get a lot of food. But yes, it's absolutely okay to buy from the vendor on the streets.
Okay, now we talked about this a little bit already about your photography equipment because you were saying use the safe at the hotel. You know, my advice, and this is eBuff. This was the very first trip that we took. So eBuff went, you see, she's got kind of like a fanny pack on, and I mean, it's just normal precautions, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Although Cuba is very safe, remember everyone. I mean, I live in Atlanta, okay, and and I'm originally from Brazil, but I honestly think that Cuba, for me, is one of the safest countries, and I've traveled everywhere, Paris, you name it, Italy. Cuba it's such a safe country, but it comes down to pay attention to your stuff.
Yeah,
Don't go dancing the rumba and forget about your gear on the side, because yes, it could be gone.
yeah.
So just keep an eye out for your gear. That's all.
Okay, so what do we bring?
Yes, passport, cash, definitely comfortable shoes. Cuba is very, the attire in Cuba, in the evenings, most people like to dress up. It depends. But although it's a very casual atmosphere, it just depends who you are. So make sure that you bring comfortable shoes, because we're going to be doing some walking. February will be a lovely time to be in Cuba, especially in Havana and Vinales. Hat, sunscreen, because most of these items, everyone, it's very, very hard to find in Cuba. And most importantly, your personal medications, please.
And you know what? You just made such a good point. It's really hard to find this stuff. They don't have like a 7-Eleven on every corner.
No, they
You
don't. No,
really
they
have
don't.
to make a list and check it twice.
They don't.
Okay, so what do I need to bring as far as photography? Now I'm talking about a photography trip now. We're this webinar is a little bit general, but then we're going to get more specific about the Understand Photography trip. So I think this would be good for any photography trip though, or anytime you're going to go take pictures. Always bring 2 cameras, even if one of them is your cell phone, because you don't want to be on a photography tour and your camera break and then you can't do anything. So if you have 2 cameras, it's better to buy 2. And then, they're coming out with a lot of cool, different cameras and super zooms. So if you have a lens that would go from like 18 to 270 or something like that, that would cover everything. But what I generally do is I'll bring one wide lens, like 17 to 85, and then one telephoto, 70 to 200 or something like that. And that should cover everything you need. Because this is a photography tour with us, it's a workshop. So we are going to be doing some slow shutter, silky water, things like that. So you're going to need a tripod. So if you have a lightweight tripod, that's much better, but it still has to be sturdy. Those cheap $25, $50 tripods just aren't worth the money. So you can get a decent tripod for maybe $150 that's not too heavy. Unfortunately, the carbon legs that are lighter but still sturdy are expensive. Shutter release cable, filters like polarizing filter, ND filters if you have them. If you don't have them, no big deal. And then, of course, lots of memory cards, extra batteries, chargers, and things like that. You want to talk about the chargers, Trish?
Yes, in Cuba, especially in Vinales, and we're going to be staying, and also in Havana, we use 110 and also 220 volts. So please make sure that you bring an extra adapter. You can find one. My favorite one is you can buy it at Bed Bath and Beyond, and for $10, $15, but that is a must to bring, and because of the especially in Vinales, they use 220, Peggy.
Okay. And is that the same thing they use in Europe?
Yes, yes.
So if you have a European charger, well, actually, not all of Europe is the same, is it?
No, not everyone. But the prongs, for example, people ask me this all the time. These are the 220, the round prongs, not the flat ones, the round
Okay.
ones.
Round ones. Okay.
Yes.
So just make sure.
Yes. No, that's a must bring. Absolutely.
Now, the other thing I put as optional was a laptop because we're not going to include editing classes in our workshop. So it's kind of up to you if you want to edit during your trip. It's just another thing to carry. So it's up to you if you want to bring your laptop. I usually bring mine because I still have to work. Unfortunately, life goes on even when I'm gone. So I will usually bring my laptop, but it is heavy. So it's up to you. We're not including any editing classes, but if you want me to critique, a lot of times we'll sit out at night and we'll have a drink and we'll just kind of look at pictures and critique each other and things like that. So the laptop's up to you. And then, of course, I just wanted a little reminder that the internet is sketchy. So don't think you're going to work the whole time away from home or something.
But you can certainly use, if you have a Mac or so, you don't need internet to work if you have Lightroom and Photoshop to edit your pictures.
Right. I was just thinking about email and things like that. So, okay. So then somebody asked me, well, am I providing any photography equipment? And the answer is actually yes. One of the things I want to work on, Trish is going to find us an awesome model or two. And I want to practice some off-camera flash. So you don't need to bring a flash. I will provide the flash that we can use for the models, and I'll bring a small reflector too. So we'll work on that kind of stuff too. It's really, really fun. So this is what my setup. This was our trip in St. Croix a few years ago. My hair was short, no makeup. But that's what we're going to bring because we will work on a little off-camera flash. It's really fun. And remember, our motto is we simplify the technical, so don't be scared off by it. All right, let's see what else we have, Trish.
So what not to bring? And because, Peg, it's a short tour, the 2nd through the 9th. So we're looking at 7 days. As photographers, we tend to use pretty much, the same, outfits, and there's nothing fancy about it. However, for the evenings, ladies, bring a nice pair of shoes, perhaps a dress or so, but remember, comfortable comfortable, because we're going to be doing a lot of walking, and you know, as photographers, we use our bodies a lot. So you want to make sure that you are comfortable what you're wearing. And luckily in February, there's little chance of rain. So, you know, so just pack what you're comfortable with. And usually most airlines, 50 pounds is the limit, by the way, whether it's Delta or, you know, Southwest or American. 50 pounds is the limit per person. Actually, Southwest, let me repeat this. Southwest allows you 2 free bags. And Peggy, I highly recommend everyone flying from FLL, Florida, Fort Lauderdale through Southwest, because they do allow 2 free bags. And that's wonderful. But up to everyone, though, I personally never carry my gear. I mean, I always carry my gear with me. I never put it under the plane. So that's just me.
No, I would never either.
You know,
I always keep the gear.
Absolutely.
And it does help you pack a little more lightly when you have to carry it all, right?
Absolutely. So everyone remember that, you know, I would suggest, you know, Southwest. I do not work for Delta or Southwest or any of them. Just based on my experience, Southwest is the way to go.
And by the way, that's a question coming up. We are going to talk about that in just a minute. So we're going to go more specifically into our tour, the Understand Photography Ladies Cuba Tour, February 2nd through the 9th, 2019. And by the way, Joe Fitzpatrick is probably, we don't have it all set up yet, but he's probably going to do a similar trip the following year in 2020. So if you're, you know, if you can't come this February, don't worry about it. You can still learn what it's all about. So what we're going to do a big variety. I mean, it's basically travel photography, landscape photography, cityscape, street photography, sunrise and sunsets. I mean, it's on the beautiful Malik on the water right there. It's gorgeous. And then of course, we already talked about, you know, working with our lighting and things like that. It's going to be a very small group. We have a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 10 ladies. Includes hotels, and we're staying in decent hotels. I mean, one of the things, and I think this is somewhere else in the program, but you know, Trish has a lot of experience going to Cuba, so she knows which hotels to go to because,
Yes.
you know, it's sometimes Cuba, their standards are not quite as high as ours. So that hotel El Capri, is that what you say?
El Capri, yes.
Is really nice. I've been in that hotel. It's very, very nice. So
and there's a lot of history, Peggy, to that hotel. You know, back in 1956, it was one of the mafia hotels. You know, so that, you know, in addition to everyone, in addition to the wonderful photography experience that we're going to have, you know, Cuba. It is such a contrast because there's so much history, especially between the U.S. and Cuba. And, you know, that hotel, it was built in 1956 and it was inaugurated, refurbished in 2014. So yes, it has elevators, you know, it has the amenities that we are used to. And by the way, wonderful breakfast served daily that we're going to have. And don't forget about your chocolate croissants every morning. My favorites. Ooh. But wonderful Cuban coffee, service, you know, you name it. Internet, yes, you're going to have internet at the hotel. And, you know, I think Peggy and I talked about the rooftop with the wonderful views, you know, for to take photos and so forth. There's a pool. There's a pool for those of you who want to relax. You know, nightly bands playing wonderful Cuban music. So in addition to photography, you're getting so much more. You're getting the experience of Cuba and learning about such a wonderful and exquisite country.
Yeah. So we're going to go through cities while we're in Havana. This is the old fort, and then this is the city. So actually, Joe Fitzpatrick took this picture with a long lens, and I was quite jealous because he was able to compress the picture to make, you know, to make it look all tight and nice together. But this is the kind of stuff that we're going to do in Havana, take pictures of all this different stuff. Oh, here's a picture of Capri, El Capri.
El Capri. See, we have, 42 inches plasma TVs, and yes, we have HBO and CNN, believe it or not. Um, but we're in Cuba. When I go to Cuba, Peggy, it's my time to turn off everything. But for those of you who are into, what's the economy in the States or whatever, we have CNN, we've got HBO, the amenities, as you can see, very comfortable beds, daily housekeeping. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful stay. And look at the view. You're going to have,
Fabulous.
depending which rooms you're going to be staying, you could be viewing the Hotel Nacional, and behind that, the ocean, or you could be viewing in the back, towards the west, the city. So
It's a
nonetheless, it's
very,
a wonderful, wonderful
it's a very
place.
nice hotel. Very nice
Very
hotel. And now, everybody who's already signed up, I know one person said that she wanted the single supplement. If you want that, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to pair you up with people to room with. These are just some pictures of Havana, Sloppy Joe's bar, which is, of course is very famous from where what's his name? Why can't I think of his name? Ernest Hemingway used to hang out,
yes,
right?
yes, yes,
And this
yes.
place, this I don't know what this place is called, but the very first time we went to Cuba, we ended up in here and it was a local place with pizza and they had these pitchers of beer with ice in the middle of them so that it didn't get watered down, but it stayed cold. Oh my God, it was so cheap. We were eating and drinking.
Yes, it's very affordable. Very, very affordable.
And one of the nice things about having Trish with us is she takes us out of the main touristy areas into like where the fishermen live and the local people live. Um, One time she took, well, more than one time, I guess you do it every time, took us to a ration store. That was fascinating to me
Yes, yes.
because they don't go to the grocery store. They go to a ration store and they have a little book like looks like World War I or something where they
Absolutely, absolutely. Every Cuban, by the way, you guys, every Cuban, whether you're a doctor or you're an entrepreneur in Cuba, which, by the way, there's a lot of them going on now, which is good. Everybody gets a ration book, and that means, you get X amount of rice, beans, chicken, or pork. Kids up to the age of 7 get milk. But there's still a lot of dire need for additional food, such as vegetables, that which it doesn't include on the ration. So we're going to be learning a lot about this country because it
it's
is so intriguing. It is so intriguing and so complex.
I completely agree. It's fascinating. Okay, now we cannot go to Cuba. Of course, you're going to see cars like this all over the place, but we included in our trip a little ride in one of these cars because you have to go. You have to get a ride in one of these cars.
Classic cars. Yes, 1956 Chevy.
What was interesting, you get to know a lot of the taxi drivers, and those cars cost them about the same as they would cost here. They're about $65,000, and these people make, what'd you say, $30 a month?
Between 18 and 20 a month. However, Peggy, I must say that if you are a private owner of one of these classic beauties, you are doing much better than being a doctor.
I heard that before. The taxi cab drivers in Cuba are one of the highest paid people. Now, they haven't been allowed to have their own business for that long, right? Like 10 years?
Yes, I will say for the past, 8 years or so, because whether you have a private business, especially for the ones with the private businesses in Cuba, they do pay taxes. And taxes range from 35 to 45%. So yes, these are legal drivers and with beautiful, beautiful classic American cars. The first time I went to Cuba, I had this private driver for a whole week, and he had a Chevy, 56 Chevy, and it was in mint conditions. And you wonder, how can they keep up with the maintenance of the car and so forth? Well, and that's one of the other questions people have about Cuba. A lot of their family members live, especially in Miami, and we are going to be seeing a lot of, especially the airport. Cubans coming in with their luggage wrapped in plastic and so forth. And a lot of that is for the businesses in Cuba because they cannot get the parts, in Cuba. So it's an amazing, amazing story behind the wheels, shall we say.
It's yeah, it's really fun to meet the people. Okay, so we're
Absolutely.
going to spend some time in Havana, but then we're going to go to Vinales. So now this is my dream to go to Vinales. And so where is it? I put
It's
a little
westward of
map up here.
Havana. It's about a 4-hour trip, and we're going to be stopping halfway to have in my opinion, Peggy, one of the most authentic Cuban cuisines ever. I know the family personally, and put it this way, they even served Fidel when he was alive back in the 90s and the 80s. So we're gonna stop, and do a little stop for lunch and the waterfalls. There's tons of nature photography. In fact, I do my birding photography tours there. So yes, Vinales is known for it's the tobacco country of, in my opinion, the world. And we're going, and that's what makes this trip so special. Especially in February, it's the harvesting season for the tobacco. So we're going to be able to see the tobacco leaves, take pictures of the farmers. We're going to be engaging with the farmers directly, having, cigars and coffee, from their humble homes. And this is one-on-one Cuba. It doesn't get better than that. And Vinales is, yeah, the countryside, very different from Havana. Think of countryside,
And we've
wonderful,
got,
wonderful place, wonderful place. I love it.
all right, I want to talk about that more, but I do want to just have a little detour. The very first time we went to Cuba, we just went on one of those packaged trips, and what they do is they give you a very little time in Havana, and then they put you in this varadero. How'd I
Oh,
do?
Varadero, yes. The Varadero is, northwest of Havana, and it's pretty much an all-inclusive resort, about 7 miles or so, of all-inclusive resorts. Think of, Cancun. For the beachgoers, it's very famous for the Germans, the Europeans to go there because it's their defrost time. Beautiful, beautiful beaches, absolutely beautiful beaches, and
But
number one destination though for Canadians.
And let me just tell you though, we chose not to do this because when we went, we were disappointed. Not that it was a bad place, it was a beautiful place, just like going to Fort Lauderdale or the Bahamas or anywhere.
Right.
It just was not different. So we want our Cuba trip to be very authentic.
And
So
unique.
unique. And so now, right now they have these cruise ships going and they're giving them one day in Havana or maybe a day and a half in Havana, and then you're at Veradero. I can't say it. Veradero. How'd I do?
Varadero.
Anyway,
Yes.
so this is going to be a lot more authentic trip. Okay, so here, holy, this is one of Trish's pictures, by the way. Trish is also a photographer. That's part of the reason that we like working with her so much because she understands what we need.
Yeah.
So these mountains, or what are they called?
Mogotes.
Mogotes.
Yes.
And they're just so
And
cool.
they're especially beautiful, especially during, the sunrise and the light, the changing of the light every 30 seconds counts. So ladies, usually at that time we wake up pretty early and we go to our, literally the back porch or the, our,
I'm looking for a
area where we're
hotel.
going to be
Oh, here it
photographed.
is.
Right there in your room, by the way, right from your room, which makes it even more special to take these amazing photographs of the mojotes. And it's just beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
So this is our hotel. It's called Los
Los
Jasmines.
Jardines, yes,
Jasmines. That
yes,
sounds like an H. Los Jasmines.
in
How
Vinales.
nice. And this has
Yes.
got a nice pool for crying out loud. That's big. Now
And
this is not quite as high end as the El Capri.
That is
correct?
correct, Peggy, because mainly in Vinales, there are only about 3 hotels. None, and this is the number one hotel, especially for photographers. I have taken many, photographers from, especially from National Geographic, and they all stay here mainly because of the $1 million view.
That's
Okay. It's a very nice hotel. No, it's not a 5-star hotel, but we're in Vinales for a reason. We are there to experience and take photographs of the nature of that. It allows us to be there. So, but it's nonetheless a wonderful little hotel, very friendly, very safe, and wonderful.
Now, again, I designed this for me because this is my dream trip. So Trish arranged for us to do some of the tour in Vinales by horseback. And somebody said, well, I don't know, I've never been on a horse. So what do you think about that? Now, this, by the way, this picture was in Puerto Rico. I have never been on a horse in Cuba.
On our program, Peggy, we have the horseback riding after lunch, and some people want to take a siesta, aka nap, or go with us. I would highly recommend the horses because, it's you're in Cuba. You don't want to be spending time sleeping. I know everyone can be tired and so forth, but these are gentle animals and they travel very slowly, so you don't have to worry about racing or anything like that. But very, very nice horses. They're used to people riding them, very, very slow pace. And yes, you can take your gear with you, take your favorite camera, and take pictures along the way. Absolutely.
All right, that's to me sounds exciting. Denise said too that it's exciting.
Yeah.
Um, these are in the wrong order. I messed up somehow. All right, well, you know what Denise just asked, and I have to say it right in the webinar. She said, do we have to worry about bed bugs? I have to ask.
No, in my personally humble opinion, I have been going to Cuba since 2011. I have never, ever had any bed bugs, whether I'm staying in a 5-star hotel or a 3-star hotel or on an Airbnb. No, no worries.
Okay, so will we meet before the trip? And I guess that's a question for me. See, this is us, little crowd of us, but we're boys in this case. Anyway, because I mean, some of us are from Southwest Florida, but not everybody. So I thought, you know what? Why don't we just have another go-to meeting that'll be private with just the people going, just to where we can all kind of like a group chat and we can all talk and decide, one of the things, once we get all the deposits in, then it's time to make the airline reservation. So I'm going to find the best flight there is. And I'm going to say, okay, this is where we want to go. We're probably going to go out of Fort Lauderdale or possibly Miami, probably Fort Lauderdale though, hopefully Southwest Airline, but whatever is the best deal. Right now it's really inexpensive to fly to Cuba. It's $202 round trip as of today. I checked. So I'm going to try to get all of us, to say, hey, let's all fly on the same flight.
Yes.
And if somebody's coming from another state, like I don't know if Kathy has a place here, but I don't know if she's going to still be in Michigan or whatever the story is there. So we'll have to deal with that individually. Okay, so what level of photographer? Well, any level, because it's going to be such a small group that you're going to get a lot out of it no matter what your level. And plus, we're going to step by step everything, so if we say here off camera flash, you're going to get it. And even if you don't get it, you're still going to get good pictures because we're going to be, here, put your f-stop on this or whatever. So you're going to have a lot of time, lot of fun, but you're really going to learn. I wrote somewhere in here what we're going to learn about. One person asked me, they said, well, you're more expensive than like going on a cruise. So what do you have to say about that, Trish?
Well, honestly, Peggy, we are not offering a budget backpackers tour. I'm going to be honest about that. We are going to be offering, high-end tours. In addition to that, with so many amenities, and because we are going to be a private tour, we're not going to be the cookie cutter that you can go with other companies. And I stand back to this. We're not offering a budget backpackers tour. Okay. We're going to be dining in wonderful paladares. Paladares are privately owned restaurants. The very exquisite, wonderful, wonderful places. You
And
know,
what, let me just add, what a difference between eating in a government restaurant and a Paladares. In a
Absolutely.
government restaurant, you're just going to be sitting there waiting for your food forever.
Yes, sadly but true, sadly but true. And, these private places that we're going to go to, it's very authentic Cuban food, but on the higher end. These are private. I think I mentioned before that Cubans that own private, enterprises, they have to pay a very hefty tax, to the government. So it's not just a place that you go and eat. And no, it's the experience. It's wonderful food, wonderful food. And, our program also is a people to people program. And this is how most US citizens experience Cuba, since it's an educational program legally permitted by OFAC. And what is OFAC? OFAC is the Office of the Foreign Assets Control in Washington. Peggy, I've been there during the Obama administration and the Trump, nowadays, and a few things have changed. But, these are legal tours that we're going to be doing. In addition to that, it's a private tour. And we are adding a lot of exceptional, stops and things that normal people that go, they're not going to be able to experience because they don't know Cuba. And, working with my agency there, they provide all the services. So all in all, it is an A+ tour.
Yeah, and we're including a lot of things that would, if you had to pay for them on your own, you would be
Absolutely.
spending, even if you went on an inexpensive cruise, you would still be paying about the same probably if you had to get your classic car by yourself and all the dinners and lunches, and you're not going to be eating on the boat the whole time. So what's included? 7 nights, all transportation, including bus, classic car, and horse. All your breakfasts, 5 lunches, 4 dinners, photography instruction, private Cuban guide. Now that's something that that's a little bonus that we're doing, right, Trish?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. In addition, to me as a tour manager, we're going to have our local tour guide, and, he or she is, will speak English, will give you, the history about Cuba, and we're a team. It's going to be the driver, we're going to have the same driver, the same guide. So it's a very private group. Again, I have to, say this is not a cookie cutter a tour, Peggy. This is authentic, very private, very individually based, because of the items that we've picked to do. And it's a chance of a lifetime. And everyone has had and will have an unforgettable experience.
Yeah. And you know what I was just saying about the cruise ship type of stuff, we include like the tickets to get into the cemetery. I know that sounds weird to go to a cemetery, but it's so cool, you guys. You wouldn't believe how cool the cemetery is. And what else do we do? I can't remember off the top of my head now. I have a brochure here. But all the admission.
Callejón de Hamel, for example, which is, for most of you who are not aware of Callejón de Hamel, which is another added bonus to our tour, we're going to be learning. I mean, and this is, by the way, an excellent time to photograph, people dancing the rumba. And we're going to be learning, in addition to photographing them, about the religion that is very much growing in Cuba. Very much so. So that's certainly a plus. We're going to have in each of these special places, in addition to our local guide and myself, we are going to have local guides behind the scenes. We're going to have a local guide at the cemetery. We're going to have a local guide at, in Vinales, letting us know about the history of the tobacco. In Havana, we're going to have a local guide, for the Callejón de Hamel, which is, their number one, tradition in Cuba in terms of religion. So these are all very important facts, in
Yeah.
my opinion, to learn about the Cuban culture, in addition to wonderful, photographs.
And it's so nice going with Trish because she knows everybody, you know? So what will I have to pay extra for? We have a couple of times that you can get out there on your own with free time, where lunches, dinners, a couple of lunches, a couple dinners. Some alcoholic beverages are included with the dinners, but I said they weren't included because I don't know how much you guys drink. Just kidding. Um, and again, I already said the average as of today, round trip February 2nd through 9th, Miami to Havana, and same thing with Fort Lauderdale. It was the same price, $202. So it's very inexpensive, and it's less than an hour flight, I think.
Oh, less than an hour, Peggy. Yes.
So it's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
So as far as what we're going to learn, obviously we're going to learn on the fly because we're going to be there and we're going to see something cool. And it's like, what settings should we use? But these are I made a little list of some of the things that we're going to teach, which is HDR photography. You've never done that. It's really fun. We're going to do some silky water and maybe some streaking lights at night. So we'll do some slow shutter speed techniques, panoramas. Cuba's a great, Havana especially, but I would imagine Vinales with those beautiful mountains is going to be great for panoramas. We're going to talk a lot about composition tips, zoom blur if you've never done that, and panning. I love to pan in Cuba for some reason. It's one of my favorite things to do. Streaking lights, I said that. We're going to talk about flash on your camera, off your camera, using a reflector. And because we are going to have, hopefully we can get a farmer to pose for us in Vinales. And then
Absolutely, Peggy. Absolutely. And we will. We
and
will.
Trish is working on a model for us in Havana as well, which I have what I have in mind, what I want, but we'll see what she can get. Oh, and
Cubans
we
are
have to
very
smoke cigars too while
photogenic.
we're there, right?
All in all, Cubans are very photogenic, and I especially love, the folks in Vinales because these are, in addition to their caricature, they come with a story, and a lot of them love to talk like most Cubans. In addition to take photographs, we're going to learn about the history of this person. He's been doing this for 50, 60, 80 years. They don't have an education. This is all they know. So this is so unique, Peggy.
It's so fascinating. One of the things I'm just thinking about this because of the highway right here, the picture of the highway. On the side of the highway, you'll see they cut the grass with machetes.
Machetes.
You'll see the men out there cutting the grass with
And we're gonna
machetes.
see that on the way to Vinales. Okay, once we leave Havana is, very metropolitan, but once we get into the highway, um, it's very, very different. And we're going to be learning so much on the way to Vinales, so much. So in addition, everyone, to the photography teachings, we're going to be learning about Cuba. So you getting, the photography experience. In addition to that, one-to-one questions and answers to the guide, to myself, to the driver, to the locals, learning about this wonderful country.
So how much touristy stuff versus local flavor? Because the way that I think is you have to do some of the touristy things. You don't want to miss out on some of the things that like Cuba is known for.
Well, Peggy, to be honest with you, when, for example, the cruise ships, for example, that's very touristy. They, in my opinion, and I have done the tours with some people, with the cruises, that's not how you get to know Cuba. They've got very little time in Havana and the other provinces. It's a very quick come and go, so the only, I think, touristy thing that we're going to do is, which is not touristy, in my opinion, is walking through old Havana. And especially if you have an eye for, architecture. Absolutely. So, yes, you're going to see other people, other groups, and so forth, because it's such a vivacious, very, popular spot to be because everyone has to be there. But our tour, Peggy, will not be touristy tour at all.
The first time I went to Havana, I was so shocked because I just didn't know it was such a big city, number one. And I didn't know how beautiful it must have been at one point because the buildings were so ornate. They reminded me of Paris, but they were colorful, but
Yes.
but they were also all in ruins. So it's slowly changing and they're kind of fixing places up and things, but it's still pretty fascinating.
Absolutely. And it's gonna be a very eclectic tour as well because, we're going to be driving through, the poor areas. The old Havana that we're gonna be walking during the tour, a lot of, believe it or not, especially US relations with Cuba, part of our money goes to the renovation of these old buildings. So we are adding to the contribution to Havana. And we're going to see the before and after photos, especially in the old square. We're going to be pointing that out to you. And, we're going to learn about, the 1990s, also known as the special period. And there's nothing special about that. Cuba went through a very difficult time. And as I mentioned before, Peg, in addition to the photographs, we're going to be learning about Cuba, which,
Yeah. I,
many
I was
people we don't
and
hear.
I didn't know that much about Cuba before, but it's kind of fascinating. You'll see a lot of things in the Russian language and what happened when the Soviet Union disbanded.
Yes,
Basically, they lost all their welfare money.
much, pretty much.
Soviet Union was basically supporting Cuba, so they went from poor to very, very poor, and that
Yes,
was in the 90s.
and they're much, very much survivors. So, and especially I'm a car enthusiast. I love the classic cars. We're gonna see, people working on the classic cars out of nothing. And those are awesome moments to take photographs of these mechanics,
Yeah,
taking,
best mechanics in the world, right?
yes,
Those cars are well, almost 60 years old or more than 60 years
yes,
old, some of them.
yes,
Crazy. Denise asked, are we going to Hemingway's house? And I believe that is on our,
yes, we are. Yes, Denise, we are, my dear. Yes.
that's cool too.
And by the way, for those of you who have Netflix, there is a very good documentary, kind of a movie, but in my opinion, it's more of a documentary because I was there when they were filming it. It's called Papa, Papa. Okay, so yes, Hemingway was loved and is still loved by the Cuban people, and we're going to be visiting his estate and eating at an excellent Paladar, also known as the privately owned restaurant, um, in his, heck of the woods.
That's nice. Now, I think this is our last slide. So do we have any questions? Let's see. I'm looking and I think we've been answering the questions as they've been coming in. So, oh, Denise just finished a book about his third wife. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to watch that documentary now that you told me about it.
It's a very good documentary. Yes.
Um, any other questions, or do you have anything to add, Trish, that we might have missed, or let's see.
Cuba, for those of you who have not gone to Cuba, I honestly have to say it is my destination. I have traveled all over the world, and it is my destination. My heart is in Cuba. These photographs that I've taken experience the very soul of the unique Caribbean island that is Cuba. Symbols of the bygone era mixed with architectural styles and these lovely Cuban people that you're going to be meeting. So it's a trip of a lifetime.
Now, the only thing that I forgot to even put in the presentation, but our deadline for the deposit is, what is it, October 10th?
October 10th, yes.
Yeah, it's in 7 days. So that's why I thought, you know what, I'm going to put this webinar out. And of course, thank you, Trish, for helping me with it, because I know a lot of people had questions and some people said they couldn't make it. So I'm recording it and I'll put it out later if anybody wants to watch it. And I will send the slides too as a PDF. I think maybe I could do it like this because I think they're big enough that you can read them. So if you're thinking about it, just give me a call, 239-263-7001. Or you can always email me, 263-7001, info@understandphotography.com. But, you know, at this point it's getting late, so it's probably better to call because you probably do have more questions. We try to cover everything we could think of, and more things even came up. So, oh, and the balance is due November. Oh, crap. Hold on.
November 1st.
Was it November 1st?
Yes.
Okay. November 2nd. Okay. So yeah, so the balance is November 2nd because we've got to pay for it. So that's info@understandphotography.com. So somebody, I just saw, how many do you have going right now? We have 6, which is our minimum. So we're hoping to get at least 1 or 2 more.
Yes, up to 10. And that's, you know, Peggy, that's what's going to make this tour even more intriguing and more, you know, desirable, because we're not traveling, you know, on a bus with other people, and it's not a cookie cutter tour. It's very much private, and, you know, we have designed this tour to be so unique. And you're going to get all of it. You're going to get the experience. You're going to get the photographs. You're going to be talking to the Cubans. You're going to have an unforgettable experience. And, you know, like I mentioned before, this is not a backpackers tour. This is authentic, high-end, you know, very full schedule tour to Cuba. And I've done this, like I said, for 7 years, and people love it. And they will too. So.
And you know, well, Trish knows this story, but I didn't really even want to go to Cuba. I just thought, well, big deal. Cuba, it's like any other Caribbean island. And when I got there, oh my gosh, I was so wrong. And now I'm like addicted. I want to go back all the time. So I know you guys are going to love it. So, all right. Well, I don't think, if we don't have any other questions, it's about, you know, a little bit after 8. So that's a little more than an hour. That's probably enough of listening to us. And I will follow up and send an email with these slides and the recording for this. Okay. Thank you, Trish. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this with us.
You're welcome, Peggy. As you know, I'm leaving Friday to Cuba. And for those of you who are listening, you know, give it a chance. We promise we're going to have a wonderful, wonderful time. And it's going to be such an experience. We need that. And it's you know, all in all, a wonderful place to go. Photography. I mean, oh my gosh, if you're a photographer, my goodness, especially, you know, you can make books out of your photography to give it to your friends or family for Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever. You know, there's so much beyond what we're going to be doing. There's a lesson to be learned. You know, this is, you know, the place not to go in most people's mind, but it is a place to go. It is so wonderful. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm Peggy Farren with Understand Photography, and we will see you soon. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Ciao. And we say ciao in Cuba. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.